Hey everybody, let's take a look at a comparison between a vintage Citizen Para Water and the reissue. This reissue isn't too old, I think 2020, give or take a year. Citizen came out with a line of watches called the Citizen Para Water. And it's a reissue of a 1959 classic, of which this is one of them. In case you don't know, Citizen is the first Japanese watch company to make a waterproof watch or a water-resistant watch. Their language at the time was para. They had a para shock watch. That might have been the first Japanese shock-resistant watch, something with shock mounts on the jewels. But they certainly were the first Japanese company to come out with a water-resistant Japanese watch. And that was in 1959, as I said. And this is one right here. I picked this up not too long ago, I'd say within the past year or so. It's probably not a 51, not a 59. There is sort of etching on the back. I don't know if that comes out. Yeah, you could kind of see. You certainly see the serial number there. I don't know if there's a good serial number decoder. See, at the bottom there's also a date. I see 07056, so it definitely wasn't 56. That would have been nice to have looked up. Maybe you know how. But I've seen this watch in a couple of different variants, and this was a different age, remember, not like today where everything has a skew and everything has a specific variant, and if you just change it a little, it's a different model. So I've seen this version with and without lume. I don't know if you can tell, but on the hands, you can see there's a little inset area there that has lume. It's long since died. It's aged away. And there's all these little pips at the end of each of these indices, and that would have been lume. There's a white dial, or silver, and a black dial version. And I've seen pictures of white, I've seen black dial, I've seen with lume, without, this little star down here. I've seen some with it, without. I know it was available in different jewel counts, I think 16, 21, and 23. So this tells me that this was one of the later models. This started in 59 and went into the 60s. In fact, the first ones in 59, they had a different type of index. So these are like triangles. The first ones were squarer. They were like pentagons, little squares with little points at the end. So it's probably a later version. But I've never seen a picture like this. I've never seen a white dial lume with a star. This you can do an image search all day, and I haven't seen anything like that. So that's pretty cool. I have that. We have a little damage there on the dial. When I got this, it worked for a little bit. It's manual wind, and it worked for a couple of minutes, and then it stopped. So I'm a little worried about winding it any further. I am going to send this out to get serviced. Standard for the time, snap back. This is actually a Citizen Deluxe Para Water. So the Deluxe had already existed at the time that this watch came out. I think they did some additional work on the crown tube and gaskets to make this sealed. I don't know if this is an original bracelet, but I believe it is. Looking at pictures online, this seems to be correct. So I'm wearing another Citizen here. This is not a well-known one. This is the BM 7100. I don't even know if my Para Water fits on my wrist. It may be just too small. No, it's going to fit. Just barely. Little snug, but a pretty cool watch, a nice piece of history. I don't think a watchmaker is going to have much problem servicing that. I think that looks really cool. I don't have a lot of vintage watches, but getting the reissue inspired me to find this one. So, despite this not being a 1959 model, and I think the earlier one looks a little different, as I mentioned, with the indices, in around 2020, Citizen came out with a line of these. And you can definitely see the resemblance. They released this in a couple of different versions. This blue dial here, They also have a silver dial version, also on bracelet. There was a black dial, also on bracelet. There's a green dial on a brown strap, brown leather. And then there's a cream dial also on a strap leather. Now, they're supposed to be waterproof watches, so coming with leather from the factory is a little odd, but I think all of them look great. They're supposed to be the colors of the ocean. And so blue, green, silver, cream, black. The colors of the ocean also seem to be the colors that sell on watches, so that worked out well for them. And you can tell that they definitely borrowed a lot from it. The way the lugs are kind of long and stick out, the long triangular indices that are multifaceted, the Dauphine hands. Of course, this one has a date, and it works. The bracelet also has kind of a similarity there, with 3-link and the middle link being offset and somewhat polished. So I think they did a pretty good job at bringing it into the modern world. The loom pips on this are on the outside, not the inside. I'm not too sure why. It just makes a larger loom circle, right? And maybe it looked better in comparison. That being said, there's a couple of, I should say, it has a nice display back. It's pretty cool. Only the blue model is limited, and it's limited to 1959 copies. Or it's the only one that's limited with a number. I think all of them are limited, but just not with a number, so whatever they decided to limit it at. I mean, all watches are limited, right, if they stop production. But whatever they've made, and I'm pretty sure they've stopped manufacturing these. After that, they did come out with 2 other colors. I think like a blue and a green, but with I think it's pronounced Fuma dial, where it kind of like radiates outward. So that would be a total of 7 different colorways. This is the NK 0001, by the way. There's a couple of different versions of that, and there's NK 000, 2, 3, 4, like count up. I'll post in the description what all the models are. Overall, I think it's a great, very well finished watch. You have this nice polished section here. The brushing right on the side is vertical, and it's pretty sharp. Brushing on the top goes lengthwise, but the bezel is nice and polished. And you have that really nice boxed crystal. That being said, I wouldn't quite say this really hits all marks on quality. It's not a signed crown. The crystal is mineral. It's not sapphire. That's kind of a letdown. The bracelet's fine. It's it has movement to it, but they're solid links, and I'm pretty sure they're pin and collar. They're not like friction pin, but that is a stamped clasp. Although it does have solid end links. I think it's perfectly fair. It would have been great if this was a 9000 series movement and this was a milled clasp and that was sapphire. It would have been a knockout. But I think despite being limited, I think its U.S. equivalent would have been like $250 or something when it came out, maybe even less. It wasn't sold in the United States. It was only sold in Southeast Asia. I think I bought this, I can't remember anymore. I may have just bought this on eBay, but there is an Asian Citizen site that shows this limited edition watches. So this is one of 1959 copies of blue, and I had to get blue in part because it was limited, but in part because of that dial. I think when the light hits it, they added this texture to it, which is pretty cool. I was hoping that would emulate what had happened naturally to these, like over time, but I don't see that same thing here. So that's supposed to just look like ripples, waves. On the whole, pretty cool. A darker watch, it really does shift depending on the lighting. So when you're outside, it looks like a nice brighter blue dial. I'm in indoor lighting, but all my lights are on. I got some sun coming through here. That's off camera. But let's just hold that up again. Oh, the last thing I wanted to show is that the way that they tested this watch, even though it came out in '59, they did some tests in the early '60s, and they were called the Kuroshio test, or at least the '64 one was the Kuroshio. There may have been like a '63 and a '65 test where they had a whole bunch of these dangling from buoys. that they would drop at a specific place, and they were bright yellow, so if anyone found them, like they send out a whole bunch hoping that at least one would be found. And the case to this, it's people who shape time. Not too sure what the significance of the melting shape is. But those buoys, they looked kind of like this. So I thought that was very clever of Citizen to do this. You could find out pictures online. You see what the actual buoys looked like. But there were some that were dropped into the Pacific. Like one year, I think the 64 test was in the Sea of Japan. I think that means the like Black Sea or Black and Japan Sea. So this was tested there, and it would have been watches that looked just like this. They were. See if we put on camera. Like the buoy, pretend that's what this was, and the real one was bigger than this, but not that much bigger than this. A circular yellow buoy like this with contact information. It had information on it saying that this is not dangerous, don't worry. If you find this, you're allowed to keep the watch, it even said. So it had, its aim of this buoy is research and watch test. And so Citizen Watch kind of funded this, but it was / a marketing thing as well. But these watches were dangling in salt water for weeks, months, the whole time this was drifting. And if you found it, you got to keep the watch. Just make sure you contact them, and they can tabulate that data to get information on ocean currents. I thought that was pretty cool. And this is probably not one of the watches that made it through that ordeal, but it definitely has a lot of history, and I can't wait to get this up and running again. And I'm really, really happy that I have these two of the... This is the oldest... I don't know, is it the oldest? It's not the oldest watch I have, but it's the oldest watch that I have the reissue for. I tend to pair these up because it's fun, and I thought you might get a kick out of that, seeing the differences. We're already running a little long. I'm sorry for wasting your time, but it is 2 watches, so it's only a couple minutes each if you look at it. The new watch, yeah, 41 mils. That's kind of big. It would have been cool if this was 38, but that is what that is. And it looks like 48 mils long and 13 thick. And let's, just for reference, what is the dimensions on this? This is a typical watch of the day, 35 mils. And only 9 mils. Okay, so yeah, whether or not this appeals to you, it's hard to find these. It's especially hard to find it in blue. You'll be paying a lot for it. You know, I wouldn't quite call it a great value, given that it's mineral and that the bracelet is pressed, but it has some history to it. And I think it's a very attractive watch. Let me get this one on my wrist. I haven't worn it, and then that'll be that. There we go. Really nice. Fun little watch. And I have my little UV flashlight just so you could see the lume light up. You see those pips? And you can see the hands light up there. Awesome. All right. Thanks very much.